Okay.
All right, everyone, welcome to our June TMAC meeting. Let's go ahead and start with introductions. I am Joy McMurray, TMAC Chair.
I'm Kehan Schuler, Provo Public Works.
Jeff McLaughlin, TMAC.
David Dave, Provo City Public Works.
Beth Allica, TMAC.
Peter Cotto, TMAC.
Clancy Black, TMAC.
Greg McFarland, TMAC.
Vern Kiesler, Provo City Public Works.
Lisa Jensen, TMAC.
Joseph Gandy, Provo Public Works.
Judy Johnson, Provo Public Works.
And
Jim
online,
Hamuler, TMAC.
welcome, thanks, Jim. Well, thanks everyone for being here today. Our first action item is approving our minutes from May. If anyone has a motion on that.
I'll move to approve them. They look lovely.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Skipping right along then, Jeff and Clancy have very kindly gone through the previous bike master plan to prepare recommendations of sections of that plan that should be integrated into our next version of the transportation master plan coming up in a couple of years. So we're looking forward to hearing from them, and feel free to take whatever time you need.
Just both. All right, so after looking through the transportation master plan a bunch and reading through the bike master plan again.
350 pages all tonight.
Whoa.
We didn't read them all though.
It's
I did.
But yeah, the bike master plan obviously goes deeper in a lot of places than the transportation master plan. But according to the transportation master plan objectives and purpose, it actually captures most of the bike master plan information that it needs to. One of the things we noticed about the transportation master plan is it's heavily focused on the road network. So making sure that certain streets are designated as, the active transportation central corridors and then the neighborhood, and it has those three different levels. And then it works on making sure that connections with bike lanes and getting past critical barriers in that network are addressed in the three-phase approach they take. What the transportation master plan lacks, I believe, that the bike master plan does really well is chapter 7. So if you go to page 135 on there. In the top center, there's the 8 of 206. We just want to get to 130. Yeah.
35, you said?
Yeah, 135, I think was the page. If it's not 135, it's 136. Scroll away. Well, it's chapter 7, and what it is program recommendations. So this is the stuff that's not, it's not the street level kind of applications. It's not directional curb ramps. It's not painted bike lanes. It's not separated bike lanes or anything. It's things like having a Provo City bike website, or having a bicycle program coordinator, or it does address things like safe routes to school, which we have implemented, but you'll scroll through there. It doesn't give a good listing. You just have to kind of scroll through and catch the headings. So the bike coordinator, the website, the bicycle counts. One of the things I've noticed in this chapter is Bike Walk Provo does a lot of great work in the city, and the city has helped them in their initiatives in the past, like helping do some street redesign kind of stuff with Tactical Urbanist for projects. But it's relied heavily on Bike Walk Provo for filling in most of this kind of stuff. The program type stuff has mostly been left on their shoulders, and that's great. I love the work they do, but this information in chapter 7, I didn't know whether there was the right place for it in the transportation master plan. But if part of the transportation master plan's purpose is to kind of be or fill the role of an active transportation plan for our city, it might be beneficial to include some things that aren't just street level, you know, that they're more the people level, the education, the outreach kind of issues. And so that was kind of the main thing we found. A lot of the details in the bike master plan are great, but they don't belong in the transportation master plan. They're just too in the weeds for it. And the transportation master plan up front says we're not going to focus on specific design features because we just want to focus on making sure our network is correct and that we are, you know, when streets come up for resurfacing or redesign or anything like that, we can make sure that we're following what the transportation master plan has outlined. For active transportation, though, that leaves this kind of stuff kind of hanging in the air. So, Kehan, the other link I sent you was something that Clancy had found from Bike Utah, and it was kind of a nice outline of features for the transportation plans. And Clancy put in some work comparing that to what Transportation Master Plan had done. I think it was in your mail tab.
Scroll halfway down. That second green box.
Okay. So this document just has kind of the check boxes, and I'll let Clancy talk about this, but one of the things he pulled out was some of the implementation side.
So, yeah, this, I thought it was a good guideline for what an active transportation plan should have. And so like Jeff said, I compared that to what's already in our TMP, and most of it is already in there. So steps 1 and, or I don't know, these are steps. Parts 1 and 2, partner engagement and public engagement, that was part of the TMP, is documented there. So you can scroll down, Kehan.
Scroll down a little bit, Kehan.
Sure.
Let's put three at the top of the page, if you don't mind. Yeah. Item 3, so it's at the top. And see,
Oh, it's at the top.
No.
or at the bottom.
Scroll down a little.
There you go. Yeah. So setting the vision, goals, and objectives. The TMP does have pretty good objectives. The previous bike plan obviously has a lot more. It's 200 pages of bike objectives. But the TMP covers it. Like it says, become a gold level facility, push, I can't remember the wording, but encourage use of non-vehicular transportation. So it has good goals already in the TMP in section 1.2 and 5.2. So that piece I feel like is there. More specifics certainly would be helpful, but the highest level goals that we would need are there. Existing or current conditions. Chapter 5 covers those. In the TMP, it kind of covers them all at once, which is fine.
You mean all at once for vehicles and?
No, it kind of covers bicycle, existing and future all at once.
Okay.
So, I mean, that could be more robust next time, but it's there. And then item 5, recommendations. So we have great recommendations in the TMP for active transportation. There's the future network and specific projects in phase 1 and phase 2. But yeah, that's perfect right there, Keon. So it has projects, but 5B and 5C and 6 and 7 are the pieces that Jeff's talking about that we feel like aren't really in the TMP. And maybe all of them don't belong there. Like these programs about education stuff probably don't belong in the TMP, but they should be somewhere. You know, Jeff and I agreed, and we can discuss that. But the programs and policies that will support those goals, we just don't cover those in the TMP. But they need to be covered somewhere or they won't happen. And then the implementation strategy, item 6, we have phased projects. But again, when you look at the high level vision of like a gold level bicycle facility, we don't say anything about how we'll actually achieve that. Like maybe you all know what the requirements for that are. I don't. and I don't think most people do, so like having some sort of plan for getting there, I think would make sense. And then last, performance measures, we don't have any at all, so figuring something like that would definitely be helpful. So not all of this needs to be in the TMP, but those are the pieces that I said we feel like are missing. And I don't think we should feel bad moving on slowly from the old plan. Like in the last 10 years, every major road in Provo, except for maybe, even 9th East got stuff, has had significant active transportation infrastructure added to it. So literally every single one. Like we can say that it did its job and it's great. And there are pieces we shouldn't throw out yet, but most of it doesn't belong. Yeah.
I have two questions. What do you hope to accomplish with performance measures? Like, I don't just want to say, let's measure. We want to say, like, where we want to be at, right? And that was something that the bicycle plan did have some measurements for, like what we're trying to achieve. So if we add that, we just want to make sure that we say why we care about the numbers and what the numbers represent. And then the second question I had was, were there any of those programs that you listed in that first document, Jeff, that you think you don't want to do? Like, did you like all of them? But like you were saying, maybe
we didn't get specific about which we did or didn't
right.
like. Yeah.
Because some of those seemed less useful than others.
Agreed.
Like
yeah.
training city staff, maybe on a smaller level, or I think it'd be harder to swallow some of them.
My question about the programs was, does the existing TMP have programs for other modes? Right, like, would this be the only
Yeah,
element of it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the entire TMP is pretty much focused on street level physical treatments and classification of the network. Saying, switching these to arterial, these to that. I mean, they even go out of their way to say, we're not going to get into design specifics. We want to leave just much cross-section, this much right-of-way, and then you figure it out for each street. That was kind of their thing, mostly just staying very high level in the TMP.
So this would be like its own chapter that
It would be,
is refined in a way that the rest of the document
Or even
is
a
not.
separate document or something. Like, one of the questions is, do the programs really belong in the TMP? Which is, I think, maybe what you're...
Yeah, like, it would be weird if this was the only area of the city that had programs. On the other hand, like, programs are how we move the needle on a lot of stuff like this. And so it might be more appropriate to have programs like safe routes to schools documented in a particular place in the TMP, right? And that's a big part of active transportation. But
Yeah, well, I mean, safe routes to school is mentioned there. Appendix C, which is the active transportation toolkit, I think it's called. So
That sounds like a program location,
Yeah.
a toolkit. Put all your programs in there.
Yeah,
That could be,
that's ever changing because the Safe Routes to School recently went from state funded to federal funded, and there are so many more requirements now with the federal funds. I think what Jeff and Clancy did was awesome, going through and looking at that. I learned a lot just listening to you guys talk about what is in and what is not. I'm going to speak from the perspective of the consultant that did the work. And I'm not going to mention names, but the bike plan, a lot of that is you can go and find the same information in our bike plan that we had 10, 15 years ago in many other bike plans across the West, okay? The appendix and the toolbox are exactly the same. So when we won the Transportation Master Plan, and I approached Provo about, hey, there's this new state law in 2019, we need to do an active transportation chapter. They kind of tied it to affordable housing in some way, shape, or form. I don't know how, but they did. And we approached it very differently, right? We recognize that programs and administrative policies are set by the administration and by the departments. And we kind of steered away from that on purpose. We got to the projects. and the implementation of those projects. So that's, and I'm purely speaking as the consultant that managed the project, okay? So I think that hopefully provides you a little explanation and background in that approach. And it was very creative and very unique. There was nothing, not one thing that was cookie cutter about that plan. It was unique to Provo for the core, for the neighborhood, and for the citywide approach of the active transportation. I should say now I'm speaking as in the engineering public works department, I am learning the interesting differences of who has planning responsibility for the right-of-way and for trails, okay? So that is something I'm learning how the protocol works in Provo, because the Parks and Recreation has the trails plan. We have anything in the right-of-way plan type of thing. So that's kind of where we're at. I'll just kind of share that with you as I'm kind of breaking and learning how that works.
So our original reason for having you two look at that was because we wanted to fold it into the transportation plan. So am I hearing that you are now saying maybe that's not a good idea? Maybe it's good to have it be separate, but just to abridge it?
Well, or do you want to answer, or I can answer?
Yeah, so that's kind of my feeling. I was like, oh, I'm gonna feel really dumb going back in there. Like, we should fold this in, come back the next month and say, well, actually, based on what the TMP is trying to do, they did exactly what they wanted to do, and I don't want to lose this, but I don't know that it belongs.
So do you have an idea for how to make sure it stays visible then?
Well, it's kind of a mixed recommendation because everything except the programs in the bike plan we don't need. It's either in
there somewhere.
It's either in the TMP or it's got pages of design guidelines there's so many online national resources now. 10 years ago, it made sense. It doesn't now.
When you say programs, what does that mean?
Like youth bicycling.
Oh, okay.
The table of contents actually has a good list of all of them.
Could you go through it so quickly? I didn't.
Yeah, you just go to chapter 7 in the table of contents.
Which is back at the beginning?
So,
at the very beginning.
The people level things you were talking about.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
bicycle.
A website, a coordinator, specific training for police about, how to handle cyclists and whatnot.
Well, they do have that. And
So we don't need street level design specifics, is what you're saying. Those are available, like, for our city employees. And when you go to design a street, what do you use for your details? If the TMP is
There's a whole
30,000 level, how do you get those details?
So UDOT has some template drawings now.
And there's a whole guide, design guide
So there are UDOT standard drawings, as Greg mentioned. There are the NACTO standards. The NACTO standards are going from a 250-page book to 600-page books. It's ridiculous, right? So the new one is going to be phenomenal, evidently. And then sometimes we're constrained by right-of-way. And so instead of the standard 6 foot, we do 5 foot. Orem does 4 foot on the list, right? If you go from Provo to Orem or another city, you'll see the difference. And sometimes they count the gutter pan within that 6 feet, right? So it really just depends what we got for right of way. And so that's why Clancy probably said, design standards change all the time. And they're getting better and they're improving and there's more innovative things that are now being accepted as mainstream standards, which is awesome.
So we don't need those in our.
Well, I'm wondering if the TMP should have some kind of statement like, new bike facilities and redesigned roadways will be designed according to the latest NACTO standards and project practicability, right?
And the current TMP, the appendix that lists the active transportation features, it could just add a statement like that, like this is a general description of features. Most recent guidance should be, yeah.
Absolutely, that's important to add, and I think maybe identify the best resource. I think the UDOT standard drawings, what they're doing.
Yeah, I think the new UDOT standard drawings are very good, and I think NACTO is obviously the key resource in a lot of this. right? And I think, yeah, I mean, everyone assumes, I think, when they do roadway, like roadway engineers know that, okay, we've got to follow the ASHTO Green Book, not because there's any particular reason why we have to, it's just like, that's what all the licensing based on, it's the resource we have, right? And so if we just say, hey, inside Provo City, when we're dealing with active trails, you need to look at the NACTO Urban Streets Design Guide and base everything you do off of those ideas. Yeah.
What about, I thought I remembered when we were looking at the bike plan, that there were suggestions for, maybe like ways to think outside the box on bike trails. So how do we say we're open to creative design or up and coming design without it being a standard? Like, how do we try something new?
My thought is that the way the TMP lists options for the network, it kind of already does that.
Okay, good.
Like, it doesn't prescribe, you will do this. For each level of the network, it says, hey, here's strategies that are often helpful.
Okay.
But that little
So
group,
it has wiggle room in it
Yeah.
for creativity and
And that's the way a
special circumstances.
plan like this should be, I think.
Because we've talked before about this may be what was standard, but it wasn't the best practice, and so we learned that too late, and now we've got all these not best practices
Right.
that have
Yeah.
been put everywhere.
Yeah.
All right,
I think you
good.
mentioned a really good point is when we start talking trails and including some of this new information like NACTO standards into Parks and Recreation Master Plan as well. And so we're not the only, Public Works is not the only department that deals with, active transportation, right? Parks and Rec does all the time. And I really like, Lisa, what you were mentioning, as we start to look at performance measures, which is not a bad thing. It's just that we need to make sure that we can actually measure what our goal is. Sometimes we make these goals and then there's no way to measure them. If there is a way to measure them, it's financially infeasible, right? And so I think it's important to come up with realistic performance or goals and then be able to measure those. The negative thing I hear about performance measures is that if you don't reach the goals, that's what we hear all the time. And I don't want to see closed-minded people, it's probably the best way to say it, use our performance measures against our active transportation folks. Because they do.
Yeah, how many bikes have you counted in your boulevard, right? Like that.
And Greg, you've seen it, Jeff's seen it, Clancy's heard it. There are naysayers out there about active transportation. So I'm just saying that our performance measures need to be clear, concise, and careful as we, and then how do we measure those performance? So trail usage, is it the number of users? Does this mean if I don't have anybody riding on a certain bike lane that I got to remove the bike lanes? This is the type of stuff that sometimes people think.
I have a question. Are there any standards for measurements in the TMP? Like, are there,
What do you mean?
like, how we're getting these measurements, how we're getting these performance measurements, how we are?
You mean like people going and doing a manual count versus some sort of machinery doing it?
I mean, the trick is that the volumes that are in the TMP for the most part come from UDOT's automated and counting program, which
So
only
that's
counts
what
cars.
I was wondering.
So there are vehicle counts all over the TMP,
That's vehicle.
but they're given to us, right?
Yeah.
And so if Provo was going to establish a bike count or pedestrian count program, which I think should be considered, Provo would have to do it. We couldn't just get the data from UDOT, right?
So in the TMP, none of the measurements and standards are from Provo itself. It's all from outside sources.
I think Provo does count some.
we do.
You just have a traffic count?
Rob used to report on traffic counts all the time.
Yeah, I thought they
Well,
included
and I kind of
city-specific
thought
counts.
that, but I just wanted to
But
establish.
not on a regular basis and not in the same location. We're mostly responding
To request.
to requests for a study to warrant something, right?
Well, that's why I'm wondering, because for me, the measurements of, like you said, performance measurements, measurements of how programs are working, stuff like that, if we're relying on outside sources, we're not getting the I don't feel like we're getting true accurate data if we're relying on outside sources. So if we're integrating the bike master plan, because I think somewhere in there it said something about measurements. Sorry, I would read but not, and I'm not saying this just for bike, but I'm saying for all, walking, bike, vehicle, all of it. Can we put something like that in the TMP saying every 5 years, every 7 years, every 10 years, we do our own active count so we understand where we're at with our goals?
There's a lot of expense to doing those.
Which I know it's expensive because it means city resources and everything like that. But I'm just wondering, is there something we can, 'cause I think that will actually go a long way for programs. Because if we're actually saying, hey, look, there is an increase in this area, maybe not in this area, we don't really have to do anything here yet, but there's an increase in this area, that program to make sure that kids are being safe. Stuff like that, I think go a long way. If we had these measurements, would go a long way
So
for,
what we are doing right now is kind of similar to that.
okay.
I mean, to answer to your example that maybe an area is seeing growth and the other maybe not as much. If that is happening, we would find out. There would be requests coming from either the district or the residents or the school, if it's school related, and then we would respond back and do our count. And so regardless, with cases like that, at one point, we will get to it.
And I understand, but it's more of a response instead of a,
Having a system in there, yeah.
yeah.
There's also a challenge with bike counts and pedestrian counts where, you know, if you count a sidewalk and you see that 2 people use it every day, then that may seem to indicate that you don't actually need the sidewalk there. Whereas what's actually happening is the sidewalk is in poor condition or it's not well connected, and if you had a better connection to it, you'd see 15 people using it a day, right? And so the data that shows what's happening isn't the data of what could happen. And I wonder if we could develop performance measures instead that are like, you know, we use level of traffic stress measurements of bike lanes and say like, you know, X% of lane miles in Provo are covered by level of traffic stress 2 or lower bike lanes, right? Like, or you know, have measures that are based in what Provo puts on the road rather than just how it's being used, right? Like, do we, if I asked you, Kehan, how many miles of LTS 2 and under bike lanes do we have?
I probably don't remember on top of my head, but
Yeah.
if I wanted.
How long would it take you to compute it? Would it be weeks or would it be like a couple of hours?
Well, not too long, but I mean, having the equipment, and again, if we're to have a program like that, that doesn't mean we gotta have 2 or 3 or 4 equipments. There's gotta be a lot more equipment to have it be placed at all different locations.
That's what I'm saying, like,
So,
instead of count.
Time,
So LTS is just a description of how the bike, like, how separated it is from the road,
From
the
the
speed of the adjacent traffic, stuff like that, like.
no, if for a certain location, shouldn't take that long.
Okay. So I wonder if we could develop a series of performance measures that are something like that instead of just counting miles driven or something.
Let me also check with our regional MPO, MAG, and check with Jim Price, who, I thought we had some permanent trail counters out there somewhere.
We do.
And, I want to see where those are located at, and I want to look at some of that data. And again, there is a little bit of a difference between trail data and, you know, some on-road usage stuff.
Yeah.
So it's,
I think it would be interesting to have things like, just have somebody stand at the UBX stop that's south of campus and see how many people get off with bikes over a 2-hour period of time. And just sort of, just have a static measure of every April on a sunny day, doesn't matter what day of the week it is, it has to be a weekday, just to sort of get a feel for how many people are using active transportation for commuting to various places.
before finals.
Before finals.
Right.
Yeah, like early April.
On a normal April.
No.
You know, just something that gives you those tangible, like, you don't actually have to set up a traffic count, but you could have, BYU students and just like as part of one of the transportation classes, go count pedestrians or bikes or whatever. I was part of one of those as a BYU student, so that's why I know it exists, that
Go down, count it up.
you can go count an
Even early-
intersection or a trail or some sort of access and just see those points where how many people are getting off of Front Runner with a bike? How many people are, riding through this intersection with it? So, and just to sort of get an idea of users in places, like Greg, Greg was saying, well, some of them aren't in good shape, so that's why they're not using them, but maybe we can just measure the ones that are in good shape. And are they from year to year, even though it's just a small snippet, is that usage increasing? Pick the peak time that we would expect somebody to be commuting, and then maybe do counts on a Saturday, the first Saturday in the spring when it's warm, whenever that falls, and just sort of get a ballpark idea of how many people are riding their bikes on the Provo River Trail, or how many people are walking to the parade, or, whatever, like pick a high volume time when there would be options for people to bike or walk and see if they're doing it.
Yeah, but I also
Hey,
think it'd
Vern.
be good to. Sorry, go ahead.
Hey, so
Yeah, is that
I am on
Oh, it's
Zoom.
Shabbat, okay.
There are two locations that MAG counts these at. One is up at the mouth of the canyon, and the other one is near Wilderness, Pauline Wilderness Park. So you know.
Which part?
Paul Reed? Is that what you
Yep.
said?
All Rain Wilderness Park?
I'll bring it.
By the,
So that's actually in Provo.
Yeah, both, yeah, and the canyon may not be, but the Paul Reams is.
Well, the one in the canyon, it's
Those permanent bike counters that go into the bike model and the bike planning.
How are they counted, by video, or is there?
It's
Infrared.
infrared.
Radar.
A radar counter.
I would think.
Just measure the speed of who's going by, so you can tell if it's a walker or a bike. But what I was saying is, I think it would be good to measure even those areas that are not in good condition, so that we have, like, that.
They stay the same, why?
Exactly, so we improve the area, and it's great, but the counts never go up. So what is it that we didn't do that maybe needs to be done for those counts to go up?
so I want to bring it back to this key question of what we're taking from the bike master plan. I feel like Lisa's question on programming, maybe you guys didn't get a chance to finish responding to. Do you have thoughts on where that should go, like in an appendix of the transportation master plan, or you want to not touch the programming and leave it to departments and administration?
I don't know where it should go, but I think looking at the old bike plan, everything in there has a modern replacement except chapter 7. So to me, we could throw out everything except chapter 7, figure out how to have a
How to not lose.
modern equivalent of chapter 7.
So when we're revising it, let's take that chapter 7 and really look at it and say, how can we?
Yeah, is it an appendix? Is it a separate document? Is it?
Would that be just a
Who knows?
recommendation to administration, though, because is programming something that really goes into the transportation master plan, or is that something that needs to be handed over to the city and say, these are recommendations of, we should have a bike coordinator, we should have active outreach, which would probably go through the neighborhood district program or stuff like that, versus actually in the.
I feel like that could still be a very good appendix item, as these are the
Yeah.
recommendations for active transportation
It's
program.
part of the toolkit.
That could be a
program.
paragraph in the toolkit, I think, and say,
Yeah.
here's your list. So I think that's something we could discuss when that time comes, but
Absolutely. And when you're doing, I think, Joy, to your point of what's implemented, I think when we're dealing with administrative policy and we're dealing with public policy are two different things. Right now, the policy has been to coordinate with Bike Walk Provo and allow them to take the lead on a lot of things. That relationship, I think, is really enhanced over the years. I think it's improving. I really believe that, I'll equate it to this. There's a city in Colorado, and I'm from there in Boulder, but they have tons of employees, okay? Lots of employees. And their administrative philosophy is we do the work in-house. We don't have consultants do it. We have consultants that do the work. We manage the projects. We have private construction companies do the work. We oversee and manage the projects. And I think that partnership really works in the state of Utah, and that's something we should continue to enhance or look at.
Since we're not paying bike walk.
Yeah, that's the question I have. The funding question is the problem.
That is true. That is true, but but we also don't do, what's the bike cooperative?
Bicycle collective.
Provo Bicycle Collective.
Yeah, Provo Bike Collective, and that's all over the state. And that, there's 4 or 5 different collectives throughout the state. And how is that done? That's a nonprofit.
So I'm thinking about the reaction that Bike Walk Pro is gonna have to this discussion and recommendation.
So one correction that I want to make, sorry, really quick. So we don't have bike walks leading our projects. We're leading the projects, but we do reach out to them. We do collaborate. So I just want to kind of put that on.
Yeah, but so we rely on them a lot to tell us where the problems are and where. But what I'm, they were the ones who said, hey, there's this Provo Bike Master Plan that seems to be ignored.
Yep.
Back in 2013, the city council voted to adopt this bike master plan, which included hiring or designated somebody as a bicycle program coordinator. And that has not happened. And if we now say, okay, well, everything in the bike master plan is duplicated in the transportation master plan, except for the need to hire a bike coordinator, and we're just going to drop that, then it's like, well, okay, we haven't actually done what Provo said they were going to do and what we pushed Provo to do. So I don't know that we need to say in here in the TMP that we need to have a bike coordinator, but I do think that there needs to be a recognition of what the community was pushing for 10 years ago and what the council actually voted on doing and what has actually happened in the last 10 years since, right? We had a goal to become a gold level city. We didn't achieve it. So is there any kind of reflection on what needs to happen in terms of program planning or prioritization or funding allocation to make that goal a reality? Because obviously what we did over the last 10 years didn't get us there. And I think that that's going to be the response from the bike community. It's like, well, okay, we're still not doing anything, and it seems like you took the one document we voted on and ignored it, and now you're killing it.
Great, I thought we did achieve some type of level.
Silver, but it's what we had before.
We got silver, and then we reapplied gold and got silver again.
Okay.
And silver's not terrible, but it's not the goal that we set.
And so,
To your point, Greg, those things are in chapter 7.
But I think it's worth Provo looking at that chapter's.
We're not getting rid of it. We just need to make sure we don't cover it up and bury it.
That's right. And what are we doing to actually make it happen?
and previous city councils cannot find current or future city councils. What I'm suggesting, and it is 100% true in my mind, that when the city council in 2020 adopted the new transportation master plan, that is the active transportation plan. This is a great resource. I think Jeff and Clancy have done amazing work to go back and say, hey, it's not as bad as we thought. There is a lot of things in this transportation master plan that got carried over from the bike master plan. However, chapter 7 is something that we need to look at in the future. I think that's a great thing. So I just applaud your work on it because, that's a lot of pages.
Go on the record agreeing with Greg. One of the things that I thought when I was looking at chapter 7 was, well, how do we not lose it? How do we keep it on the surface and say, hey, city, it's going to take dollars, and we just got to make the decision to put some dollars there.
So why can't we, as TMAC, an advisory committee, suggest to the city that we would like to amend the transportation master plan and add this as an appendix in there to just get it on people's minds? We're not actually changing any policies right now. We're just saying these are goals that we want to make sure you don't forget we have.
That changes policy.
You think so?
Oh, yeah, that changes a lot of policy. You're talking about a full-time staff person or a part-time staff person. That may not be the will of the administration. You're talking a program
But
that,
see, that's where we're bringing it forward as a policy change, as a document amendment, would say, hey, these are the goals we had, do we still have them now? And it would give the current city council the opportunity to weigh in on whether they still value those things. And then it's on them to adopt it or to deny
Yeah,
it.
city council could decide, no, we're not gonna do this. we're
But
gonna
if
do
we
that.
say, we want to make sure these goals that were once goals are not forgotten, then we can bring it to, the planning commission can review it, just like they did with the transportation master plan. Then the city council can hear it, and we can say, this is why we don't want to lose these, this is why we think they're still valuable, and then we can let the city council decide what they want to put money behind, what they want to put anything behind. And then they can maybe take 3 of the 10 or whatever, you know, like they can decide, and that becomes an amendment and an appendix and a toolbox or whatever we want to call it. But then we're not just waiting till we update the transportation plan, we're amending something that's a whole.
I think that makes sense.
But I see that you're hesitant.
yeah, I'm just gonna
Well,
say.
you're hesitant because you're saying we can't just take chapter 7, put it in appendix. And I think we agree. It
Yeah.
needs to be reviewed first, and then
It needs
whatever
to
is
be
an
presented as a list
acceptable,
of goals.
whatever is an acceptable version of it be adopted.
And there will be recommendations from staff about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, and the financial consequences of each one. It's kind of like when a bill is proposed at the state legislature,
Right.
they have a
Which
financial.
is exactly what I'm proposing happen,
Right.
because I don't think it's realistic that all of these things will be adopted. But our responsibility as an advisory committee is to make sure that that previous opinion, that previous goal doesn't get lost. And so if we say, this is what we still have before us that hasn't been addressed, we don't want to lose it. City Council 2023, how do you feel about these goals? And then they can sweep out whatever they don't want to have, and it's on them and not on us for letting it get forgotten.
Yeah.
What if we did something like write a memo or a letter to the city council saying, hey, we recently reviewed the bike master plan that had existed from this date, and we realized most of the elements have been represented in the new transportation master plan, except chapter 7. We recommend you take a look at chapter 7 and decide what the current goals are, and then, and consider an amendment to the transportation master plan based on what your current priorities are.
Yeah.
And we've talked about programming, we've talked about, measurement in our discussion today. Like, these are the things that are not currently represented in the transportation master plan. I mean, would you want to recommend that the city council look at that and say, what do you guys care about 10, 15 years later? What do
And
you
like
want to-
Burton said, it may be that they look at everything and say, we will not put money behind any of this, and that's okay.
Fair
It's now been modernized to what the goals of our current elected officials are willing to fund, and they can say, this is no longer a priority, and it no longer is a plan.
But if they're like us, they might not even know that that plan is
Right,
there, and
exactly.
they don't have time to read 250 pages to figure out what,
Right.
and compare it. You guys done that?
It's our
Good
job,
job.
it's our job to give them the chance to
Right,
decide.
and that's why I feel like that's, if I were to guess why this committee was established, I think
Yeah.
it's for things like that, where there's issues that cross, boundaries of who's in charge of them. And we just need to make sure that they get communicated, and then the city council can make the decision.
Yeah, and I think if we make the decision, if we don't push it forward, then we are deciding for them that they
Right.
don't need to do it,
Right.
right? And that's.
Vern, no one can follow you. Do you want to say anything?
I have no problem with that. I'm just thinking that next year is the year that we gotta start the update for the transportation master plan. It will not be this year for the update. It will be 2024 to be completed by 2025. So, we try to update the transportation master plan once every 5 years. Provo's pretty proactive at doing that. There are many communities that don't update their TMP for 10 or 15, 20 years. And it does cost a considerable amount of money. Clancy and I are aware of that as consultants or previous consultant, that these are developed,
But see,
a lot
I
of
don't
time.
think it needs to be wrapped in that. We update and make amendments to the general plan all the time. We amend zoning ordinance all the time. So I feel like this could just be an amendment. If, in the whole scheme of transportation master plan, this is just a little snip.
So are you guys hearing general plans on a monthly basis instead of twice a year?
Not the whole general plan, but somebody will make an amendment to a general plan designation, right? So it's just like, you know, this area is supposed to be residential, but we feel like it should be, public facilities for one reason or another, and so it gets amended. And so I'm looking at it on a smaller scale, that this is not a 10-year general plan review. This is not a 5-year transportation master plan review. This is a piece of the transportation master plan that upon review, we realized was missing, and we want to make sure that it's represented until the next update.
Yeah, and I was just referring to back 25 years ago when I was here, we put in place that their general plan could be only amended every April and October. Obviously, that doesn't stand anymore.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And the reason for that is because,
It's project related.
yeah, people were coming in monthly after doing a 3-year process of adopting a new general plan, and the communities really in neighborhoods working hard on that general plan, only to see a developer come in and modify it every month was a little disheartening. And so what at that time they decided to do is only amend it twice a year. Applications were due like a month in advance.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening.
That's not happening anymore.
I think
Okay.
because they're project specific to so many.
It's still in the code that way, but it's not
Practice.
handled that way.
Still in the general
Okay.
plan, but not practiced that way.
So am I sensing that TMAC is uncomfortable just saying, let's look at this in a year or two with the general revision? We would feel more comfortable making a recommendation now to the city council. Is that accurate?
I just don't see a reason to wait.
Yeah.
If they wait, it's 2 years plus before that's a documented policy or whatever.
Isn't this a reference policy though in the
Well,
transportation master?
he said the transportation master plan is the guiding document.
Well, yeah, well, and I understand
This
this.
is just extra.
If I can find
Yeah,
that paragraph for you, Beth. Like really, just one little thing at the end of it.
Yeah, and yes, you're right, we do reference this. When we're doing our overlays and other maintenance projects, we do come visit this for locations within the areas that we're doing maintenance to see, should there be bike lane there? Should it be, what needs to be
But you
there?
go to, you
So
go to
this
the
is a
current
reference
plan though now,
document to
right?
the transportation master.
Say that
This is a
again.
reference document to the transportation master plan.
It is a reference.
Yeah, it's not adopted the document any longer.
Well, if it's already in there, then we don't need to add anything. That's,
But that's what I was saying. If this is a reference document and they actually do come to this when they're doing streets and everything, we have the revision for the TMP coming next year. So they
It
do
starts
reference it.
next
It
year
starts
from
next-
adoption.
well,
It's a
It's 2
multi-year
years.
process.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is they're already referencing this document right now, so they go to this document frequently when they're looking at streets. So when it starts the revision of the TMP next year, we can then, since I'm assuming this body is one of the major bodies to help with the TMP revision, we can start integrating some of Section 7 into it without having to say, you have to adopt this as an amendment now, because it sounds like it's already a reference document to it.
I just would like them to review, because since it doesn't have teeth anymore and it's just a reference document, or maybe it never had teeth, if we're saying, like Greg was saying, if we truly value these things, then they need to be at the forefront of thought in planning instead of just a reference that you might stumble across.
Yeah,
Well, when
and
does city
can I
council
correct,
change?
can I correct something?
Yeah.
I don't think engineering is looking at the bike plan, because we put all that in the
Yes,
new TMP.
only, yep, like
Yeah,
course
I don't think,
overlay, striping,
I have it right
parking.
next to my transportation master plan.
so Vern looks at it. Vern looks at it. I don't think, I would be surprised if anyone else is
Anyone's looking
looking
We're
at.
not looking at the programs, what programs
They're
are
not looking
here,
at
how
that.
we're measuring the performance, no.
Measurement programming, they're not using.
Because if we're looking at that, I'm gonna ask why we didn't put those in the TMP we adopted.
We're not, to be honest with you, we're not. As a reference, when I say we're referencing it, only when we're doing overlays, road projects to see, should there be parking there? What type of parking, bike lanes, and things of that nature, active transportation wise.
But again, when you say referencing it, are you talking about the TMP or the old bike plan?
So the and I think the locations are added in the TMP too.
Yeah, I reference the TMP.
Yep.
And then if there's anything else, I
It
would
would
go
be
back.
Yes,
priority TMP, and then if it's like a question mark, hey, I can't find what I
Yep.
need, I'd go to the bike plan to try to get a more
exactly.
detailed information.
That makes more sense.
But to your point, maybe, Joy, what might be something that would be advantageous to the entire members of the TMAC would be, since we only had 2 that reviewed Chapter 7, would be for the TMAC to go back over the next month, look at chapter 7 and see if that's something that everybody wants to do, or if Lisa's proposal is to write a letter to city council and say, hey, you know, chapter 7 is not represented in the current TMP. Is this something that you feel strongly about? And I think other members of the TMAC should probably read what they're recommending before they send it to the council.
Chapter 7 is 16 pages.
16 pages.
Oh, it's not bad.
That's not bad at all.
It's too easy.
And
I wonder if
done some of the things that are in chapter 7.
Yeah, I wonder if instead, like, could we draft a letter and then have people read it and agree, and then reference it after the letter's written, say, this is what we'd like to add, and then go reference once.
We could have the bones of a letter and
That's
then
right,
add
exactly.
add the specifics we like next month.
I think that would streamline our discussion. Like, let's come up with a draft letter, say, dear city council, here are elements from the bike master plan that we'd like to include in an addendum to the transportation master plan. And, maybe Jeff and Clancy can write that letter, send it out in the next couple of weeks. And then we can go through chapter 7 on our own and vote on it at the next TAC meeting, TMAC meeting, whether it's happening.
Is Jim still on? Is Jim
He should
here?
be on, yeah.
I'm curious if Jim and Dave want to chime in on this at all. I mean, we could have a formal vote. We can have Lisa make the motion or Greg, and then vote on it. But if you don't have anything to add, just want to give you a chance if you want to. Jim, are you there? Do you want to chime in? He's not on there. Okay.
He is.
Oh, yes.
He jumped off.
No, he's here.
He's there. Oh.
He just turned his mic on. Okay, great.
Yes, I'm back. I'm here.
Hey. Do you have any thoughts on, there is an unofficial proposal that we write a letter to the city council, that we take this next month to review chapter 7 of the current bike master plan and write a letter to the city council, to review at our next meeting, that we recommend they look at chapter 7 and decide which elements of chapter 7 they might be appropriate for an amendment to the current transportation master plan. Is that something that you feel in support of?
Yes, I am.
Or do you want to comment on that?
No, I am in support of that and would be anxious to. Let me ask a question. Who would be drafting the letter for our review next time?
I propose Jeff and Clancy, unless you're volunteering, Jeff.
Clancy is done today.
Are you really done today?
Yeah.
Oh.
Officially, let's be honest, he's not done for 15 more days.
Right, I'm probably on the hook through June.
Yeah, we can get used to this.
I'm willing to help draft letters. I like writing things.
I'll write a letter.
And I think city staff should be involved as well. Gordon might have an opinion on this if he were here.
I'm sure Gordon's gonna have an opinion on it, but we cannot help write.
Okay. Okay.
We've, unfortunately, in the past seen, people dismissed for
Okay.
writing that letter.
I'm not familiar with the.
Yeah, that's actually the way it should be, yeah.
Well, I would just take it from the angle of we're all citizens. None of us are paid to be here. And so we are writing a letter saying in our responsibility on TMAC, we've come across information that we want to reassess its importance to you, and we need to know whether you support it. And if so, we would like it to be included in an amendment. Like, it's that simple.
And the specifics of that could be discussed later, but I mean, it wouldn't be a bad idea to kind of mention what got us to that decision. Why are we even proposing, right? And that could be 10 years, this document is there. How often does it get visited? Why do we not have a bike coordinate? Like things of that nature that we haven't even kind of looked into, to kind of push them back saying that, hey, this was something that you guys approved. Is this still something of importance to you guys at all or not? So maybe that importance and the reasoning behind it.
There's probably no one on the council now that approved the bike master plan back in 2013. I think a little history in the letter would be beneficial, that you guys started looking at the differences between the bike master plan and the transportation master plan, and we saw, you know, most everything carried forward, but this chapter 7 has some program and policies and some performance issues and
That really require the support of the city council.
yeah, and that is really a financial commitment.
Right. We want to know if this is still something you value, because if not, we don't need to look at it again.
Yep.
Jim, did you have another thing to add?
Yeah, Joy, the only thing I would add is that if it's not already been made clear, that that letter be drafted so that TMAC members might be able to review it before next meeting and provide any comment to it before the next meeting, so that in the next meeting, we have a letter that has been reviewed and edited as any TMAC member may want to do before we make a final review and approval of it next time.
Excellent. Please.
Yeah, I just maybe wanted to offer a little perspective of how things work when you're talking about program recommendations or performance measures. In my mind, it's all tied to funding. And the way funding works for us is we get X amount of dollars to spend mostly on maintenance, because we've never had dedicated money for anything else. So we take that money and we go, okay, we're going to put sidewalks into that, and we're going to put trails into that. And so we stretch that money as far as we can every time we do a project. So I would suggest that probably our silver rating is probably a function of funding. Is if we had the $20 million that Boulder spends every year on facilities, that would be about 5 times what we're currently getting to spend on our roads and our facilities here in Provo. So hopefully you can tie that in and link that. Maybe a good performance measure is how much money is being spent. In an effort to try to get more, because the more money we get for maintenance, the more it goes to building more bike facilities. So.
To be clear, I don't think any of us really, I mean, we care, but it's not like it's gonna crush us.
We're not advocating
If
a
the city
specific
council
program.
says they don't like any of those program ideas,
It's their choice.
we're just trying to say, these were originally goals, we don't want them to get swept under the rug without approval. Will you please reassess your priorities and fund it accordingly, right?
We're just bringing it to their attention.
Yeah,
We're
I mean, I'm not even
advocating.
lobbying to keep them or get rid of them. I'm just saying it's our responsibility as we've reviewed the document to make sure it doesn't get lost in the shuffle.
This was not captured in the.
Yeah, and I think when we do the 2024, 2025 update, we should recommend changes, right?
Right.
I'm just saying, let's review these and keep them or lose them. But,
Absolutely.
So this is, as we wind down, I ask the question, do we do it now? I mean, what's the value of it now versus 6 months from now when there are 3 new counselors?
Isn't it budgeting in November or October?
It's adopted.
It just barely happened?
The new budget is.
Yeah, May.
Ready for July.
They'll have their budget
Yeah.
meeting
July
next week and adopt it. Yeah.
You say now, Jeff, wouldn't you all approve this letter and send it in a month?
Yeah, that's my question. Does it make sense to do it in a month, or does it make,
I
do we
think
wait for a new set of counselors? or-
Because we don't have an agenda, I think, yeah, do it now and let them.
And the
Let
reason
them
is
decide.
because we don't actually need them to say they're going to fund it right now. We just need to make sure the ideas don't get lost.
Okay, yeah.
And so if they value it, they can take as long as they want to come up with the programs, as long as they know that those are their goals.
The thought that I had was like, I mean, we're gonna lose Bill and Shannon or Dave Shipley or something like that. I mean, but they're going to be new counselors, so we put it on top of mind of people who are
Are leaving.
leaving in 7 months.
Yeah,
But there'll still be people there.
It'll start the conversation though.
Yeah, but I also think that this allows us to close the book on this chapter, and then we can start the new transportation master plan update with just one document that we're updating instead of three or four.
You actually have to get momentum too, because the way budgets work at the city, we start working on them in November. So in order to have it on people's mind by November, you probably need to start now.
Yeah.
So.
And that was my thought, is that we could even couch it in terms of like, in preparation for the new, you know, we're starting this process now. This is already one thing we see. Start thinking about it, start deciding how you feel about these lists of goals that haven't happened. And then we pass it on to them. But I feel like we need to do our job in finishing, like Greg said, finishing this project we've been working on that was initiated partially by our understanding of what the city council wanted us to work on. So do we want an
Troy.
official motion on this? Yes.
Troy, at the end
Yeah.
of the day, it might be easier. It might be easier to have the current city council bring this forward to them because they will be familiar with it, and you don't have to get people up to speed.
Yeah.
Sure. So there's several
Sooner is better
reasons.
than later if for that reason.
So Beth and Jeff, do you feel okay moving forward with this right now?
I'm okay with it just for the pure and simple fact of keeping it in the forefront. I understand that, but the back of my brain goes, we're just gonna wait till the revision of the TMP anyway to put anything in, implement anything. But just to keep, like you said, just to keep it in people's brains so it's not lost. I understand the value of that.
Well, also, we have to remember that the update of the TMP is not a rewrite of the TMP. It's taking what's there, reevaluating it, keeping what we like, updating what needs to be updated, but we're not reinventing the wheel.
And that's why I'm saying.
If it's already in there, it will keep it there, right?
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying keeping this in the forefront of people's brains instead of letting it, drop behind the oven.
The last plan was a complete rewrite.
Yeah, that was.
And that's why you're doing it every 5 years, is so we can keep reassessing things on a more frequent basis.
I agree. Let's hope this is an update, not
It's an update, we're not rewriting that again.
I think we have sufficient unity, we can move forward without an official motion. We can do the motion next time. Just want to review who is volunteering to help write said letter to city council. Lisa?
I'll help with whatever.
I can help if you want. You said you like writing.
I do like writing.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't you go first? Why don't you go first and spit out what you have just written down and what you feel, and then you can send it to both of us and we can collaborate. How's that sound?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I feel like that is good work done, TMAC. Good, thank you so much, Jeff and Clancy, for that huge project that you did. I know neither of you have tons of extra time in your life, so thank you both. And good job, TMAC. This has taken us several months, but I feel like it's important to say active transportation, both by the new laws in 2019 and now in our own plan we created 10 years ago. What are we doing with this? Let's get it integrated in a way that will actually have power behind it in the TMP. So I think this is a good project for us. So I know we've taken a lot of time on that. We can go quickly to the rest of our agenda for the day. Let's go ahead, Vern, why don't you give us our active transportation network presentation, and then I can push the other things into a very quick update.
And I'll be very brief too, Joy. As this is my third meeting, I think. I haven't been here 3 months, so maybe it's only the second meeting, but here's the story. So we wanted to take a look at our active transportation projects and our active transportation network and those that yet to be connected and done. So everything that you see in green is completed now, and everything that you see in purple is already existing. And then everything you see in red is not started. Okay. And so you'll see that we're planning, this is a 20-year transportation master plan. It's 20-year ahead, and we've done a lot in the first 3 years, I think. Some of that stuff on the west side is happening now with the reconstruction of the regional park. So there's a lot of things going on there, and we'll see some of that stuff connected and some of that built.
Why is Lakeview Parkway not represented with a line? Isn't that part of the active transportation network?
So again, we're getting a little bit difference between trails and the on-street bike lanes.
Okay.
So, and I want to be able to define that better and understand that better in the city, but please forgive me, I've been here 3 months and I can't tackle it all at once. So what we've done is the first time we just showed you the existing network, and I think the second time we showed you what the plan was, and now we're showing the connectivity between that. So if anybody wants this, I'm happy to email that out to you, or we can just email it out to the TMAC. Judy, let's put that on there. Yeah, we'll email that PDF file out. Did you lose it?
Oh,
You
no.
need a pen?
Let's- That means less minutes to
Nothing's
approve.
documented. We can go rogue.
Work of art.
I move that we adjourn.
No. Judy doesn't get to vote.
We've really gone off the rails.
I have a question about this.
Could we add the trails to it, though?
I would love to see it all together.
Really hard.
Can't do it all at once.
It's such a critical part of our transportation.
Because sometimes you have to defer to the trails because they're the safest route.
Or like, the Provo River Trail is the best bike corridor in the city.
I mean, this,
Right?
yeah, it does accentuate the black hole at the interchange where you
And
can't
maybe
get
we can
through.
maybe we can have a separate map that shows all the,
No, and there's no
Trail.
reason why it can't be layers, okay?
Yeah.
Give me a little bit of time, and I'll add that. Once I figure out a little bit of jurisdictional authority.
Hey, let me just say this, that's a lot of bike trails. Thank you.
They're not trails. They're lanes.
That's a lot of bike. Terminology.
And Dave is exactly right. Whenever we do a maintenance project, if it's on there, so.
That is a lot of progress.
I'm gonna show you a couple of examples at the end of our meeting, and where we've implemented 1550 up in Grandview, okay?
I wrote on it yesterday. It looks great.
Good to hear. That's all.
That's all for now.
Wait.
Okay.
Oh, where they did the new repaving?
Anyone have others?
Yeah, Clancy has a question.
I wanted to say something.
I drove it in a car.
This is what we're here for.
Okay, Jeff is saying something, all right.
Canyon from Cougar up to 2230 has bike lanes that were recently put in, but it's red there.
Okay,
I just didn't know if that was an update that could be made.
let me take a look. I try to look at every
Did you
single
do a
roadway.
good job on that one? I want to be sure it's on the
So
map.
it's from 2230 north where?
From Cougar
On
to
Canyon.
2230 Canyon.
It's not from Cougar, it's from.
Well, by sending this out to everybody,
Yeah,
feel free to mark it up.
yeah, feel free to mark it out.
Take it back.
Will do.
Yeah.
Just feel free to.
Jeff will do that.
Up by Helaman Halls, they got rid of all the people that would park in the bike lane. They put those nice signs,
They
don't
got
park
rid of
in the
that.
bike lane. They're like, don't park in the bike lane.
Get rid of people. That's the implementation strategy, get rid of people.
Okay, bring it back. I will just say, item 5, we are continuing to next month. It says the continuing quest for balance. We talked about how that was our #1 rated item TMAC wanted to talk about. And last meeting, when we said, well, what does balance mean? Bill Fillmore said, to the city council, that means funding. So Gordon is preparing, that item is really Gordon, not me. He's going to present to us, hopefully next month, a look at where our dollars have gone in terms of balance. Where are transportation dollars going that Provo is spending on which modes of transportation, and how does that look? Because we're wanting to achieve balance on modes of transportation. Okay, what does that mean from a financial perspective? So Gordon is preparing that for
I
next
tell
month.
you, they all went to airport and now going to regional park.
That's the summary for us. So what do we count that as? Gordon was really excited to present it to us, actually.
Have gone, we're not spending it.
Question though, on that item, is there any other kind of balance in transportation question that we would like to ask staff for a report on? Any other kind of balance? When we say the continuing quest for balance between modes, what other things do we want to look at? Or is it enough to say, let's look at it from a financial perspective, a budgeting perspective?
I'm curious about usage, but I don't know how you measure that without getting information from UTA. I'd like to know how many people are paying to take transportation versus how many people have free access to it. Because that's training people to take public transportation when you give them free access, but I don't know how many of them would ever pay. And so I think we have our poor demographic that doesn't have a free card because they're not college students or work for a university. And they're the ones who are paying to take public transportation by necessity. And then the rest of us are doing it because it's free or, paid for by our employer or whatever. And I don't know how you get that ridership information, but I think that's a valuable thing to tell you whether your transportation networks are working for the people who absolutely need it. They have no other option, because that's an important area of the population. A lot of us are doing it because we prefer to be ecologically sound, or because we only want to buy one car, or, you know, whatever, but there are people who, it's their only option. I'd like to know how it's working for them, but I don't know how we measure that.
I guess, yeah, go ahead, Barry. Well, when I think of balance, I guess I think of outcomes, and I don't know what balance means. Does it mean that you can safely travel from any point in the city to any other point by a mode of transportation? Like if we want balance in origin destination selection, how do we measure that? If we want balance, if we want to allocate okay, let's get the report on allocating funding. How will that tell us whether it's balanced or not? Like Bill says that the city council thinks in terms of dollars. What is a balanced outlay of dollars? And how, like, is it? I don't know. Like, we'll get the numbers back, and how will we know if it's right? Right, and I don't think we have good goals or objectives about that.
Don't actually tell me anything, because I wrap my head around where they came.
And what should they be?
Yeah.
Right? Should it be 50-50? Should it be 30-40, 30-70?
And also infrastructure improvements for roads are more expensive than infrastructure improvements for bikes, and so like the numbers won't really tell me.
And usage numbers are different within.
We have a lot of funding tied to, strings tied to a lot of funding, like B and C roads can't be used for certain things.
Yep.
I still think it would be an important piece of information to have as we're trying to.
I'm not saying we shouldn't get it. I'm saying I don't.
Doesn't tell the whole story.
We need to figure out what we want in terms of balance.
It's also difficult to get. I think as Gordon started taking a look at this, it's hard when we're doing an overlay, and then we're only charging, you know, how do we charge the bike lane? Just for the striping, or do we charge the bike lane, the pavement and the striping for that 4 or 5
or the
feet,
demolition
right?
that came to the
So
rebuild.
it is really difficult to kind of really get into appropriate designations on that.
Well, let me just say then, TMAC members, as you have ideas for questions about, hey, I'd like to look at this in terms of a lens of balance, bring it up and we can ask staff temp, hey, let's talk about this. This is not something that I alone can figure. I mean, the question of balance, like Greg said, is super hard. So as you have ideas, bring them up and let's look into them. But we'll at least start with the financial one that has already been brought up next month. Next item then, station area plans. Jeff and I were invited to be part of a group doing a preliminary look at station area plans in Provo. The legislature has said you need to have a plan around your public transportation, a certain number of, Jeff, help me explain
Within a certain radius of each station.
Thank you.
And then they have
a certain number of stations per
It's like 400 feet or half mile or.
quarter mile
Yeah.
around the UVX stops, and it's a half mile around Front Runner.
And so they've identified the stations that are the focus this time around, and they are soliciting feedback from the public. One of TMAC's jobs is public outreach on transportation matters. So here's the website, provostap.com. Feel free to pass this along to the people in your areas and say, hey, give feedback. So let's pick one, somebody pick one that you want to look at.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, walking.
Okay, you got outvoted, Kylie.
That's fine, I don't mind.
If Kayan will scroll down a little bit, you'll see they have a map where you can leave feedback, and there's your radius. And then scroll down, and there's more specific questions where people can leave feedback as they're developing these station area plans. There are consultants who are helping in the Utah way of doing things. So please ask the people in your neighborhood, hey, go respond so that they can have input on how to make these stations functional for the communities that use them. So just wanted you to be aware, send that out, solicit feedback. That will help the plans be better.
Deadline on that?
It's
long.
all year.
It's a whole.
They said it's gonna be up for about a year.
A year.
Yeah, for about a year, but at some point, we gotta gather this information and
Yeah.
start inputting it.
Well, I asked them about a cutoff, and they said
Just
it'll be up
hold
through
on.
next year. Sure.
So I have not yet gone on and attempted to leave feedback, so I'm not familiar with the process yet, but If you click on neighborhood plan info, can you click on the down arrow there? And then they give more information on, here's the vision, here's what we already know, here's what was in the neighborhood plan, here's what we're trying to accomplish. So, pretty fun little website. Encourage people to use it and get
It's
feedback.
more than just transportation, it's also, it moves into land use kind of stuff.
So you don't just have to comment on the one that you live close to, you can comment on all of them, and you
I
can say where you
imagine-
live each time.
Yeah, I imagine they'd love to hear good feedback on any of them. Okay, so then let's see how we're doing. We
Is
have.
there a way for BYU professors who have access to BYU community to do this for the BYU community?
No.
Okay.
That was a pretty quick goal, right?
I just know it's like, we could just post something on a board somewhere that, with a QR code that says, take this survey because you're.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that with like, I could do that with like the College of Engineering, or we could ask like individual colleges to do it. There's no like university.
You know what would be great? Put the QR code at the station.
That's what I was saying, just
Yeah.
put up flyers.
Yeah.
Do we
Yeah.
have permission?
What do you think about this spot?
Yeah, we can ask UTA to help with that.
Well, it's they're collaborating on these with,
That's right.
They are.
right?
They're
We would still need to ask
You
permission.
can put it outside their property line by like 2 feet.
Put it on the city street sign across the street from the station. Just say, we want to know how you feel about
Yeah.
riding.
Rent a billboard. Tell us what you think of.
I mean, that seems like that would get at least the college demographic feedback.
great
If you have a
idea.
QR code for them to scan while they're waiting for the bus to come. And most of these are by UBX stops except for the front runner. And if we had a QR code at every station, you would get information from the people who are using them. Because I can put it on my neighborhood Facebook page, but most of those people are driving their kid to soccer. So
I will email Hannah. She's the one who organized the focus group, and I will pass on that suggestion. Yeah, that's a great.
And I'm happy to go around and post them up if we have permission. I don't mind driving around doing that, so. I just feel like it's a way more efficient way to gather information, especially from that demographic.
That's a great idea.
You want to get it from your riders, you want to get it from the people who are using it first. And we can
Brilliant.
spread it on neighborhood pages for other things.
For other things as well. Okay, we have a happy thought to end with today. Vern's going to tell us some of the projects that have been going in lately on our active transportation.
Yeah, and they kind of center on active transportation, but they're not only active transportation. And then also, I just wanted to mention before we get there that Utah Transit Authority, there's always an opportunity, if you want to see a presentation from Mary or her group, to come in and talk about ridership in Provo and what it's historically done. We all know the COVID years are kind of weird, but if you ever want to see that, they have data for us for BRT, and they have data for us for the other bus routes. And so if you wanted to ever see a presentation, we can give Mary plenty of advance notice, and she can come in and present at the TMAC at your guys' request, okay?
Can she give us demographic, like whether they're free riders or paid riders?
I'm sure she can.
That'll be hard.
She can give us some of that.
Whether they're swipes or paid, I mean, like
I
whether.
should say whether,
Yeah, fare payments is something, but she can't probably do that by route, maybe.
yeah, she probably can't do it by route, but she can probably do it by county.
Is that something we would like?
But
Sure.
let's
Okay.
ask her that question. We can ask her that question. We can ask it in her, but if you
Because I
ever
feel like
want
that
let
addresses
us
something, that addresses
The balance.
two things for me. It addresses a balance issue, because I really want to know who's using it that would still be using it if they weren't riding it for free.
So the person who really asked that question to is, WFRC is preparing to do an onboard transit survey as part of the household travel survey next year. So they're actually gonna sample.
What does
hundreds-
WFRC stand for?
They're the MAG of Salt Lake.
Okay.
But so MAG is participating in this, so they're gonna get data on hundreds of transit riders, asking them, where did you go to, where did you come from, what's your household income level, what's your vehicle
Just like
ownership?
by surveying them, like in person as they ride?
Yep.
Okay.
So that study's coming up.
So we can always, invite Mary to come and.
It sounds like there is interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like there is interest, I'll talk to her.
Yes.
Uh-oh. Well, it's key for that. In the meantime, we'll go to the next item on the agenda. Just to let you know.
Goes along with everything else. Is someone gonna jump out of a cake to celebrate planting?
How do you let it?
You're wondering where Gordon is?
Who would do?
Gordon.
It's still here.
Gordon is still, he's been here the whole time. He's in the closet.
That would be funny, Gordon.
Oh, there really is.
Kathy, Mama, your 6 years of dedicated service.
My favorite treat,
We
too.
got you some treats.
Is it real? Okay.
Wanted to let you know how much we appreciated your leadership and professionalism. Clancy suffered through the adoption of the Transportation Master Plan. And, were there others on the committee that suffered through that?
Joy was there.
Right,
I got the tail end of it,
tail end of that.
baptism by fire.
That was an interesting, process, and, anyway, Clancy, thank you for your great work, and we appreciate your service.
Thank you all. I've enjoyed it.
We got in the closet.
Thank you. Just wanted to let you know, for FYI, before we move on to this, the Community Development Block Grant, Cajon made 2 applications for funding, and was successful on both of those. For Wasatch neighborhood, $360,000 of sidewalk improvements in preparation for the new elementary school.
Yay.
And then $221,000 for traffic calming in the Joaquin neighborhood. So great job, Cajon.
Woo.
So we're gonna put a slide into Wasatch,
I
down that
actually,
really steep hill,
they told me to have a concept plan. That was the first thing that I came in.
slide you under the road.
I don't think you're gonna have complaints from the neighborhood about that.
I'm sure, yeah, the kids will love it. That's what matters.
It'll be harder to get home that way.
Okay, we are almost out of time, so Vern, if you need to.
We recently submitted a grant application with the Joaquin neighborhood and Susan for the Bloomberg asphalt parking, or painting grant, for an intersection on 200 North and 200 East. So that went in on Monday. And then, let's move straight to these projects update. We put a crosswalk at 1320 South, so people on the north side of 1320 could access Bicentennial Park on the south.
Was that triggered by the bike trip that they did a couple weeks ago?
You know, it must have, because we got a complaint on it, and then we went out and analyzed it, and we said, yes, we need one, so we put it.
That's awesome.
Okay,
Awesome.
so that's done.
So there's now a crosswalk sign to warn you, plus
You
the
made it,
crosswalk.
look how far off that is. Well, no, I mean, I assume it's for that other street, but if, we may not have enough visibility on that.
Don't worry about it.
Well, that's, that is the standard, and on top, when you're taking a picture, that's a lot closer than you think.
Is that looking south?
That is looking west, east, that's looking uphill east, on the top one.
No, I'm talking about the bottom one, where the stop sign is.
That is.
That's looking south towards
That is looking
Bicentennial.
south.
And that's
towards
like a,
Bicentennial Park.
they're not even going 15 miles an hour there because it's such a small stub street. So it's okay if the stop sign's tucked behind some shrubs.
Okay, the 100 north and 400 west crosswalk, I think my first week here, I got a complaint about not having a crosswalk across First North going to Tommy's Burgers.
Yes, that's important.
So, evidently that was important to some, and we also did it on 300 west. So 100 north now has 2 additional crosswalks, across that busy road, so hopefully people aware of that. And then,
Hallelujah.
This is my favorite thing you guys have done this year.
It was like a Baja race through there.
It was, especially on a bike. You're like, whoa!
Dave Nicholson's been very busy on doing the maintenance projects, and this was one of the first ones that we got to redo this year, and it is now completed. You can see city workers in the middle of the roundabout cleaning up some of the vegetation of growth. But this was done, and then the next roundabout that will be done is on 3700 North, up by Will's Pit Stop. So that will be.
The one west of
There's
there?
a roundabout by Will's Pizza?
Yeah, behind it, about a block.
Like
and a
as you
half.
go up the
West-
hill
west-
towards
west-
Costco?
West of it.
Like 300 west.
That's a great
They
idea.
already roto-milled, I think.
There's already,
Yeah, I rode my bike across
Oh,
the
that
road
was a
mill
roundabout.
yesterday.
there's already a roundabout
Yeah.
there, it just needs to have the
So
potholes
we're
removed.
doing the maintenance update on that
Okay.
one there. So that is just a little highlight of some of the things that, we won't get to the boring stuff like stop, notice of an advance stop sign. We get so many times. We have literally put up in the last 2 months, I think, probably 2 or 3 dozen signs, right, Kahan?
Close, probably, yeah.
So anyway, other roads that we're working on, we want to complete, a new, beacon crosswalk for Lakeshore Drive over by the trailhead. And then we're working on, we've done a little bit to that already, and also Carterville Road. We've done a little bit. And so when those 2 projects tie up, we'll show you the kind of maybe before and after pictures of that too.
Yay! Thank you. City work very much. Thank you for that. Quick question regarding next month, because it's vacation season. I will not be here next month. Anyone else not planning on being
What
here?
is the date?
What is the date?
Judy?
It's the 20th. I just put it,
It's the 20th of July.
I will also not be.
I just put it for the day off,
I'm
but I'm sure Ashley would love to come back and do minutes.
So at 20th of July, there's at least 2 of us in here. I just want to make sure we'll have a quorum.
I expect to be here.
Dave?
Not sure.
Okay. Jim?
I will be
Roll
here.
it back.
Jim will be here.
That's why
Okay.
I said expecting.
Okay. All right. Don't have too much fun about it. Thank you, everyone. I move we adjourn. Thanks. See you. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you again,
Thanks, Joy.
Clancy, especially.
Yeah, good job, been fun.
Thank you.
David was here when I started.
Are you doing the?
Here.
He left.